Hi everyone, I hope you all are doing amazing and grinding hard for your examinations. Welcome to PW International Board on this series of one shot for your IGCSE Biology 0610. In last chapter discussion, we had talked about the different structures of plant cell, animal cell and bacterial cell. We also got to know about their functions as well. We had the discussion on the topic of magnification as well. All of these topics were very important as per examinations. We solved more than 50 questions from past year papers to make problem solving your second nature. And in this session, we will be moving forward with another most important topic, that is movement into and out of the cells. Let's begin with this chapter here. So what are the list of topics that are to be covered in this session only? So we have diffusion, we have osmosis and active transports. So all of these processes, or we can say topics, are very important, are very crucial as per examination point of view. We have seen at least 2 questions coming from these topics per question paper. Let's begin with our discussion and then we will move further with the problem solving. And those questions are taken from past year papers as well. So here we have the cellular transport. The cellular transport requires a cellular nutrition to be performed, mineral ions and waters to be transported across the cell. Then we have there must be waste elimination, the cell membrane transport. So we are going to study about these in detail first. What is cellular nutrition? So cells require nutrients for energy production. So they produce energy by utilizing the nutrients and to build the cell structures as well. These are the 2 reasons for which the cells require nutrients. Then these food materials are used in cellular respiration or biosynthesis as well. So we use these nutrients for the cellular respiration and then, or you can say biosynthesis. What are the examples of these nutrients that are required by the cells? So here we have glucose. Then we will consider amino acid and we have lipids as an example that take place during the process of cellular nutrition. So they have a crucial role in cellular nutrition process. All right. Moving further, mineral ions and water is also required by a cell. Now, water is the main region where most of the chemical activities are occurring. And mineral ions are also required by the plants. Both of these, water and mineral ions, are crucial to maintain the osmotic balance. So, we will talk about that. The mineral ions such as potassium, calcium and magnesium play crucial roles in cellular processes. Whereas, when we talk about water, so water is the main region. Water is the main region where most of the chemical reactions occur. All right. Then we had also talked about that both of these, water and the mineral ions. So, water and mineral ions are crucial for maintaining osmotic balance. Osmotic balance. Moving further with the waste elimination. So cells do produce waste through cellular metabolic reactions or metabolic processes. If we consider the process of respiration in human beings as well as in plants, so we will consider the process of respiration here. Since both of these organisms, either the animals or the plants, perform the aerobic type of respiration, they produce carbon dioxide and that is toxic for the cell. So it is to be removed out from the cell. So here, during the process of respiration, the plants as well as the plants during photosynthesis, or you can say the plants during let me just correct it. The plants during aerobic respiration produces carbon dioxide, and animals during aerobic respiration both of these organisms produce carbon dioxide as a product, and this carbon dioxide, being toxic in nature, have to be removed out from the cell. So that is why the waste elimination process occurs. The cell need to eliminate waste products to maintain homeostasis, or you can say to maintain an internal body environment. That is why there is a need to eliminate these waste out from the cell. Alright, so we do not require these waste materials. Accumulation of these substances can disrupt the cellular functions. This is the second reason for which we need to eliminate the waste out from the cell. Then we will talk about the cell membrane transport. So molecules are moving across the cell membrane. Now moving further, if I talk about the permeability of cell membrane, we had already had a discussion in the previous section and also in the first one shot all about the cell membrane and its features. So it is a semi-permeable membrane that allows selective molecules to pass across it. Alright, so here in the previous topic as well, we had a discussion about the aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration in the second one shot and in the first one shot as well. Alright. So, the substances can move across the cell membrane through passive or active mechanisms. Now, what do we mean by passive or active mechanisms? So, basically, the cells require some materials to be moved into the cell, to be moved out of the cells, but these movement occur through various processes, and for that we have passive and active mechanism. Now, what do we mean by the passive transport? Whenever there is a movement of molecules occurring from a region where we have the more concentration of molecules, and this molecule will move from this region to a concentration region where the molecules are present in low quantity. Or you can say that molecules will move from a region of high concentration to a region of low concentration whenever we talk about the passive type of mechanism for molecule transport across a cell membrane. When we talk about the active transport, so it basically says that you are basically moving the molecule across the plasma membrane, but it requires energy for the process. All right, it is not occurring across or down a concentration gradient, it is occurring against a concentration gradient. That means you are moving the molecules from a region of low concentration, so the molecules are already in low quantity at particular place, and you are moving those molecules to a higher concentration region. So that is what we mean by the active mechanism, or when we talk about the passive mechanism. Now here we have the diagrammatic representation talking about the passive transport here. So in the first diffusion process, you can observe that the molecules are on the higher concentration moving toward the lower concentration. That is the simple diffusion process. And don't worry students, we are going to take these topics in detail in this particular session. Alright, then there is another type of passive transport. That means the molecules will move across a concentration gradient or down a concentration gradient through facilitated diffusion, in which channel proteins are required, in which carrier proteins are also required. But whenever we talk about the active transport, that means the movement of molecules will occur from a region of low concentration to a region of high concentration, since this movement is against a concentration gradient. Alright, we are moving the molecules from a region of low concentration to a region of high concentration. We require carrier proteins for the process, all right. So these are carrier proteins. This requires energy in the form of ATP. Now, what do we mean by diffusion actually? So, diffusion is a process by which the molecules are moved from a region of high concentration to a region of low concentration. All right. And the molecules can be, so it occurs in gases, it occurs in liquids, it occurs in dissolved substances as well. So, going through the define here, diffusion is the process by which molecules move from an area of higher concentration. You have to mark this terminology to be very important, as you will observe straight questions coming from these terminology only. So you will observe questions saying that you have to select the process which is responsible for moving the molecules from a region of high concentration to a region of low concentration, all right. So you have to keep these terminologies in your mind. To an area of lower concentration. It is a result of random movement of particles. The molecules exhibit a random movement in any direction and become evenly distributed whenever we talk about the diffusion process. So here we have the diagrammatic representation. On the left hand side we have molecules moving about. So they are in random motion and they exhibit this motion and then become evenly distributed. So this is where we can say that diffusion has occurred. So basically the movement of molecules occurred where they were higher in number to a region where they were lower in number or absent actually. You can observe from the given diagram here. Moving further, the mechanism is molecules are in constant motion due to their kinetic energy. Since they are moving randomly, so they exhibit kinetic energy due to their motion. As a result, they spread out evenly to occupy all available space. So they are spreading out evenly. If we talk about the particular diagram here, we have the container, we have the particles in it, they are moving randomly due to the their kinetic energy in them, and due to this they spread out evenly to occupy all available space present in this particular container, leads to equalization of concentration throughout the system. So it occurs so as to balance the concentration, or you can say equalize the concentration throughout the system. All right, I hope you understood this one. Now talking about the cell membrane and the diffusion. So basically, now since we have just talked about what is diffusion, it is the movement of molecules from a region of high concentration to a region of low concentration. Now I hope you are clear with this terminology of diffusion. Now when we talk about the cell membrane, so since the cell membrane is selectively permeable, or you can say partially permeable, or you can also say semi-permeable in nature, so it will also perform the process of passing the molecules across it. The cell membrane controls the passage of molecules, all right. The small molecules such as, if we talk about water, if we talk about carbon dioxide, if we talk about oxygen, so all of these molecules are moving across the cell membrane. Since water is required by the cell to carry out the chemical reactions in a cell, the carbon dioxide is to be removed out from the cell, since it is being a toxic material that should be removed out from the cell. The oxygen is required for the process of energy production, that is the aerobic respiration. So all of these molecules exhibit a motion across the cell membrane, can easily diffuse through the cell membrane. So cell membrane allows these molecules to pass across it. Concentration difference is responsible for the diffusion across the cell membrane. So how will these molecules diffuse into the cell membrane or out of the cell membrane? So you have to consider that whenever there is movement of water molecule into the cell membrane, so there must be the environment in the cell membrane that is deficit in the water molecules. So there will be a net movement of water molecules from a region of high concentration, that is outside the cell. So we have this cell, outside that we have higher concentration of water molecule. The water molecule will move from this region into the cell. All right. Now On the other hand, we can also consider carbon dioxide and oxygen. To understand it more clearly, we have this diagrammatic representation in which we are resembling an alveolus. So it is the main site at which the gases exchange occurs in our lungs. So let me write it here. Main site at which the gaseous exchange occurs in our lungs. The air that we breathe enters into the nostrils here, present in the nose, travels to the nasal passage here, then it is moved down to the trachea. The trachea divides into bronchi. The bronchi further divides into numerous bronchioles. These bronchioles are then terminated by the alveoli. These are the bag-like structures where the actual exchange of gases is occurring in our lungs. I hope this is understood by you all. So what is happening? These alveoli. So basically let us imagine, so this is an alveolus bag, alright, and it is richly supplied with the blood vessels. So here are, we can observe these are the blood vessels surrounding this alveoli. So these blood vessels are covering the alveolar structure somewhat like this, alright. So it has covered it, alright. Since the alveoli is having a high concentration of oxygen in it and a lower concentration of carbon dioxide when it is compared to the blood which is coming into the blood capillary surrounding these alveoli. So what will happen? The oxygen will move from the alveolus. So from the alveolus, the oxygen will move into the blood capillaries surrounding it. Alright, so there will be a net movement of oxygen from the alveolus into the blood capillaries. And what will happen with the carbon dioxide? The carbon dioxide will be rich in the blood capillaries, since these blood capillaries are taking the blood away from our body. So these blood contains deoxygenated blood, or you can say high concentration of carbon dioxide when we compare it with the carbon dioxide percentage that is present in the inspired air. So there will be a movement of carbon dioxide from these blood capillaries into the alveolus. So how does this happen? This happen because of the presence of concentration gradient. And what do we mean by concentration gradient? That means there must be some sort of concentration difference between two surfaces or two environment for whenever we are talking about the diffusion is occurring in this particular environment or situation, or between two, you can say, two structures as well. Alright, so I hope this is clear to you all that oxygen is moving into the blood capillary and the carbon dioxide is moving out of the blood capillary. So here we have the blood capillary and the alveolus. The cell membrane and diffusion. So concentration difference is responsible for the diffusion across the cell membrane. And how does this concentration difference is developed? So whenever there is a higher concentration of molecules in the one side and on the other side we have a low concentration of molecules, diffusion will occur. If the passage is permeable to these molecules, all right, so whenever there is a kind of passive transport, we will say the diffusion might occur. All right, concentration difference is responsible for the diffusion across the cell membrane. We have the diagrammatic representation in which on the left hand side, that is representing the diagram A, has greater concentration of molecules outside the cell, or you can say a molecules higher in concentration is surrounding the cell over here. So the blue dots here are the particles. You can consider that particles of, it can be particles of gas, it can be particles of anything, you can consider it to be solute as well. All right, so basically the, all right, so particles are moving from a region of high concentration to a region of low concentration, and that low concentration region is present inside the cells. All right, so there will be a net movement into the cell, and the movement will take place in such a manner to equalize the concentration in both of these solutions or environments. So the outer environment and the inner environment, outer environment of the cell, so the environment which is present outside the cell, and the environment which is present inside the cell, both of these will have the same concentration of molecules after the diffusion process has occurred. I hope this is clear. So the concentration equal on both outside cells slides of the cell membrane, concentration equal on both outside and to the inside, both outside cell sides of the cell membrane. All right, so either we talk about the that this is the cell membrane and we have this outer environment to it, and this is the cell membrane, this is the inner cell environment, so both of these will have equal concentration of molecules. Examples of diffusion. We have already discussed about that oxygen is required by the cell for the process to carry out the process of respiration here. And to be particularly, that is aerobic respiration. So aerobic respiration is a type of respiration which requires oxygen to perform the process here. And there is also accumulation of carbon dioxide, and this carbon dioxide being toxic in nature have to be removed out from the cell. So oxygen uptake by the cells. And how does this happen? So oxygen molecules or you can also say that the cell is surrounded by an environment that is rich in oxygen molecules. And talking about the inside of the cell, the cells must have been using these oxygen molecules to carry out the process of respiration. So cells must have used oxygen to carry out aerobic respiration. And there is decreased concentration of oxygen in the cells. And by this we can understand that there is a development of concentration gradient, that the medium surrounding the cell has high concentration of oxygen molecules, and the cells, since it has used up the oxygen to carry out the aerobic respiration process, has become deficit in oxygen molecules. So there will be a movement of oxygen molecules from the outer environment into the cells, and this follows the process of diffusion. There is also carbon dioxide elimination that is occurring from the cell. And how does this happens? So this might have happened when the respiration occurred during the respiration process. During the respiration process, there is evolution of carbon dioxide as a product. Since CO2 is toxic in nature, it has to be eliminated out from the cells. This also follows the process of diffusion. Why can we say that the diffusion is occurring here? So inside the cells there is increased concentration of carbon dioxide. So there will be a net movement of carbon dioxide from the cell to the outer environment, or you can say the carbon dioxide will move out from the cells following the pathway of diffusion here. Alright, so the cell is alright. And if we talk about the plant here, so here we have the diagrammatic representation in the leaves are represented. So basically this CO2 is required by the plant, to carry out photosynthesis. This also follows the pathway of diffusion. So carbon dioxide, or you can say CO2, will diffuse into the leaves by the process of diffusion also. So required by the plant to carry out photosynthesis. And when we talk about, there is also evolution of oxygen molecules. So oxygen molecules will evolve as a product of photosynthesis by the plants. Now both of these gases, when we talk about the carbon dioxide, either we talk about the oxygen, both of these molecules diffuse across the leaf through the process of diffusion. I hope this thing is clear to you all. Moving to the next part, the importance of diffusion of gases and solutes. So basically, talking about the gases, we have carbon dioxide, we have oxygen as well. Alright, so carbon dioxide is removed out from the cells whenever aerobic respiration occurs. So it has to be removed out since it is a toxic substance, or you can say toxic molecule. The oxygen is required for the process of aerobic respiration. Alright, then whenever we talk about the plants, in plants, CO2 is required. In plants, oxygen is removed. Not all of the oxygen molecule is removed, but some of the oxygen is utilized by the process also to carry out the process of aerobic respiration, since plant also carry out the process of aerobic respiration to release energy, and this energy is utilized to carry out the different functions of the cells. So in plants, oxygen is removed. In plants, carbon dioxide is required. And when we talk about the aerobic respiration process, whether it is occurring in the animals or in the plants, carbon dioxide is removed out from the cell and oxygen is required by the cell. Then there is diffusion of gases, and you can observe from this that there is a high concentration of oxygen outside the cell, and oxygen diffuses down a concentration gradient, or you can also say that the oxygen diffuses across a concentration gradient. Alright, that is, oxygen is being moved. Oxygen is being moved from a region of high concentration to a region of low concentration, that is into the cell. That is into the cells here. Alright. Then diffusion of oxygen into a cell. The black dot represent oxygen molecules, and you can observe that the black dots, or you can say that the colored dots in this particular diagram, are more on the outer environment when we talk about the cell. Alright, since we have already discussed about the main pointers, you can also write it down that the diffusion of gases occurs across a concentration gradient, and or you can also say down a concentration gradient, down a concentration gradient. It is a passive process, or you can say it follows passive pathway. Passive pathway. It do not require energy for the process. It do not require energy for the process. How does diffusion of solutes occur? So basically mineral ions are also required by the plants to carry out the functions, and these mineral ions are absorbed by the roots. So mineral ions in the plant roots follows the process of diffusion also, and it also follows the process of active pathway as well, and we will discuss in the later session of this particular class how does this active transport of ions takes place. So basically let me just give you a brief about how this transport of mineral ions is occurring. Basically the root here that we have, so this is the root hair cell. Let's assume that it is not having any mineral ions in it. The soil, we will also use the pink color for the representation of soil particles around the root cell over here. All right. We also had a discussion about the particle uptake by root hair cell in last chapter discussion also. All right. So these are soil particles surrounding the root hair here. The soil has more concentrated, or you can say more concentration of mineral ions. The root hair cell here has low concentration of mineral ions. So what will happen first here? There will be transport of mineral ions across this root hair cell following the pathway of, or you can say passage of diffusion for the process. Now what will happen? There will be a movement of mineral ion from region of high concentration that is present in the soil toward a low concentration that is present in the root hair cell. After the root hair cell has gained much concentration of mineral ion from the soil, now since it requires mineral ion to carry out the process, it has to transport it across the cell. So it will require more and more mineral ions to be taken into the cell. So what will happen now? The root cell having high concentration of mineral ions, and the soil here having low concentration of mineral ions. So there will be a movement of mineral ion from the region of low concentration to a region of high concentration also. So these mineral ions are also taken up following the active pathway as well. So what did the statement here told us? That mineral ions, example the nitrates, magnesium, may diffuse across plant root tissue. So basically diffusion also occurs, but most are actively absorbed into the cells. Alright. And there is also diffusion of water molecules to balance out the water potential that has been created in the root hair cell and the surrounding environment around this root hair cell. We will take up this statement of water potential in this session only. So don't worry about this. We will discuss about it as well. And diffusion of solutes we have the absorption in the ileum. So basically ileum is a part of small intestine, a part of small intestine. Water soluble vitamins, for that we have vitamin B, vitamin C, are absorbed into the bloodstream via diffusion. So they directly diffuse into the bloodstream since they are water soluble. Alright, so they will move following the process of diffusion. Glucose is initially reabsorbed by the diffusion process with active transport, which is also involved to transfer the glucose molecule into the bloodstream. Alright, so there is complete reabsorption of the glucose that is occurring in the intestinal villi as well, or we can say that the whole process is occurring in the ileum, and ileum is the region of small intestine where this process is occurring. Kidney function and dialysis also follows the process of diffusion. Let us see how does it follows. Some solutes like urea, salts in the renal capsule pass back into the bloodstream via diffusion. So you just have to consider that the solutes are moving into the bloodstream via the process of diffusion, and you here do not need to worry about what is actually happening in the kidney function, since we also have a lecture planned for the excretion process, for the respiration process as well. So we will discuss in the later one shots as well. What you need to consider here, that there is a movement of solute from the so basically solutes are moving into the bloodstream. This also follows the pathway of diffusion here. Dialysis machine uses diffusion to remove small solutes from the blood as well. Then factors on which the diffusion speed depends. Yes, diffusion is a slow process, so we do need some things to be set in order to make the rate of diffusion faster. For that, we have to first calculate the factors, or let us talk about the factors on which the diffusion speed depends. All right, so whenever we talk about the factors on which the rate of diffusion depends, we will talk about the temperature, we have wind speed, we have the concentration gradient, and we have the distance across which the diffusion process is occurring. So we have molecules and ions in liquids and gases move randomly, so they are in a random motion due to the kinetic energy. We had already discussed about this statement. Diffusion speed depends on various factors. The molecules are moving, and due to their movement they are equally distributing across the surface, but the diffusion speed here matters. So it is considering the surface area, considering the temperature, concentration gradient, and the distance across which the diffusion is occurring. So let us see one by one what all these factors do with the process of, or you can say with the rate of diffusion. So factors that influence diffusion, and first of all we will talk about the surface area. So let us assume that here we have this particular surface area. All right, so here we have this surface area. Let us assume that this surface area is of 1 millimeter square. Let us assume that there are 100 molecules that can move across this particular surface area of 1 millimeter square. Now, if we increase the surface area, to We have increased the surface area to 2 millimeters square. So there will be increased number of molecules that will move across this surface area. Now let us recombine the discussion. There might be a chance that there will be a twice number of molecules that will diffuse from the surface area. Let us assume that these are 200 molecules that are moving across this surface area. So when the surface area was 1 millimeter, so let us assume that this is the 1 millimeter square surface area and 100 molecules of any substance can move across it. If we increase the surface area, or we can say if we made the surface area twice, so let us assume that we have increased the surface area here. This is 2 millimeter square. So there will be more number of molecules that will move across this surface. So what do we infer from this statement? What does this surface area relation have an impact on the diffusion rate? So whenever we increase the surface area, the rate of diffusion also increases. So there will be more number of molecules moving across the surface area in a particular given time. Alright, so basically what the surface area says, we have this statement here: the rate of diffusion depends on the surface area across which it occurs. So we can write also that more the surface area, more the surface area, more will be rate of diffusion. So larger surface areas results in faster diffusion. I hope this factor is clear to you all. Now move toward the another example of this. So we have considered here the microvilli. So these are the extensions of cell cytoplasm here. Or you can say the cell has increased its surface area by these microvilli extensions. Alright, so in this you can also consider that at first the molecules were moving from this surface. Alright, now this surface have many foldings of or we can say many projections. These are the microvilli. In this area you will see that there is very much increase in the surface area due to the presence of microvilli. So a less number of molecules will move from this region, so less molecule transfer, more molecule transfers. I hope this is clear. So these microvilli are behaving as free absorbing surface here. The cells involved in rapid absorption, example kidney, intestine, have microvilli to increase their surface area. So this statement tells it that whenever there is or we can say whenever there is a region where the rapid absorption is occurring inside our body, let us take the example of kidney where the absorption is occurring. Let us take the example of intestine where the absorption is occurring of the we can say digested food material. So in order to absorb more nutrients or more substances in kidney or in the intestine, we need to increase the surface area by many times, and this surface area increase can only be achieved by the presence of microvilli. Alright, so this is what do we mean by increasing the surface area increases the rate of diffusion. I hope this is clear. Now, talking about the temperature. Now, let us recollect the information we have just gathered about the diffusion process. So, we had a discussion that the molecules exhibit a random movement. Now, students, you tell me that what does happen when there is increased temperature in an environment where there were many molecules who were having random motion and they were having a particular speed at that particular temperature, and then you increase the temperature. Now, what will happen? The molecules will exhibit more random motion, more rapidly they will collide to each other to the container where it is being present. So on increasing the temperature, the random movement of the molecules also increases. Or you can also say the random movement of molecules will now result into increased rate of diffusion at that temperature. So whenever there is increased temperature, rate of diffusion also increases. I hope this is clear. So an increase in temperature provides molecules and ions with more kinetic energy. So why does this happen? So the heat energy was then converted into the kinetic energy, which is being exhibited by the molecules, and here we have the molecules of gas here. All right, so what will happen? Let us write the impact over here. On increasing the temperature, the rate of diffusion also increases. On the next factor, we have concentration gradient. So basically, if you consider that we have let us take the example of blood capillary and the alveoli air here. All right. So if the alveolus has, let us assume that it has air that has 10 molecules of oxygen in it, 10 molecules of oxygen in it, and the capillary surrounding it has, let us just imagine, this is a hypothetical situation basically. So it has 9 molecules of oxygen here, and on the other side, let us assume that this alveoli here has 20 molecules of oxygen, and the capillary surrounding this alveoli has 2 molecules of oxygen. Now in which case you can observe that there is a rapid diffusion of molecules that will occur from a region of high concentration to a region of low concentration. Now you have to calculate the rate of diffusion for both of these, the number of movement of molecules that are being passed in a particular given time. So since the concentration different in the first situation is very less or very low, there will be decreased rate of diffusion. On the other hand, we have the concentration difference, and it is showing a great concentration difference here. So there will be a more rate of diffusion that will occur in the second situation. So this was an example to make you understand that how does this concentration gradient affect the rate of diffusion here. Since this was an illustration, so I will erase it here. All right. We will occupy this space to write the pointers as well. Here we have the illustration that tells that, for example, oxygen molecules diffuse into red blood cell due to a concentration gradient. Actually, this is very true, and this is why the diffusion of oxygen molecules is being taking place across the alveolus here. So there is this concentration difference due to which the oxygen is moved into the RBC and the carbon dioxide is moved out of the RBC into the alveolus. So this also follows the process of diffusion. The more the concentration difference, the more the diffusion rate will be there. So we can write this statement here. The more the concentration difference, more will be the rate of diffusion, or you can also say more will be the diffusion speed. Moving toward the last factor that influence the rate of diffusion or that influence the diffusion speed is the distance here. Now if we place these two structures, that is a cell, let us assume that here we have the cell and here we have the capillaries having very less distance in between them, and here we have the cell and the capillary is placed much farther to it. Now this is the difference of distance here. This is the difference across which the diffusion will occur. Alright, so this is the region here, and here we have this particular region. So you can see how far the blood capillaries are. So it will take more time to reach into the blood capillaries for the gases, or the movement of gases occurring from the blood capillary into the cell. So the distance is having a major role over here on impacting the rate of diffusion. Increased distance will increase the rate of diffusion. Increased distance will decrease the rate of diffusion, since it requires more time to diffusion to occur. Less the distance between two regions where the diffusion is occurring, more will be the rate of diffusion, or more will be the diffusion speed, or you can say more will be the diffusion here. I hope this is clear to you all. Alright, now since we had this factor of distance and we had an example for the discussion of distance here, so we will write about what happens and what did we infer from this example here, that if the distance across which the diffusion is occurring is increased, there will be decreased rate of diffusion. Decreased rate of diffusion. Or you can also say the distance across which the diffusion is occurring is decreased, there will be increased rate of diffusion. Now going through the statements here, we have cell membranes have a consistent thickness. Now how do we apply this concept of distance? Alright, since we cannot alter the distance here, so we will assume that the plant cells, the animal cells have certain sort of thickness of the cell membrane or of the cell wall, due to which the rate of diffusion is affected. So cell membranes have a consistent thickness approximately 0.007 micrometer, that equals out to be 0.007 into 10 to power minus 6 meter. Plant cell walls vary in thickness and permeability. Alright, so plant have highly thickened walled, less thickened walled, and on the basis of the thickness of their cell walls, the diffusion rate is affected. Thicker the cell walls lead to slower diffusion rates. I hope this is understood by you all. So oxygen exchange has been represented as an example here. So here we have a cell that we have already discussed about this diagram here. Oxygen is moving out from the blood vessel into the cell, and the carbon dioxide is moving into the blood capillary into the RBC. Now let us assume what happens if the blood vessel here, which is the capillary, has more thickened wall. The capillaries are generally having one cell thick walls of the tubes here. So what happens if we increase the thickness of the walls of these tubes? So there will be slower rate of diffusion occurring through these surfaces. All right, I hope these all four factors are clear to you all. Now we have come to another most important topic, that is the osmosis. Now what do we mean by osmosis? Osmosis is actually a part of diffusion. But why do we kept another space for osmosis, and why did not we include this osmosis in diffusion? So basically osmosis is a type of diffusion. This is the first point. Osmosis involves movement of water molecules only, whereas the diffusion involves the movement of gases, movement of liquids, movement that occurs in dissolved substances. Osmosis is confined to movement of water molecules only. For the diffusion process, we do not require a partially permeable membrane, but we do require a partially permeable membrane to carry out the process of osmosis, in which the water molecules are moving across a concentration gradient. Now, why did we call that osmosis is a part of diffusion? Because it is occurring across a concentration gradient, or you can also say that it is occurring, we can say, down a concentration gradient. All right. So here we can write it is a type of diffusion. Then it involves movement of water molecules only. Alright. Then the movement occurs across, or you can say down, a concentration gradient. It involves partially permeable membrane, for osmosis to occur. Now we have the diagrammatic representation here. We have the beaker in which this one here represents so here we have this dotted or dashed line that represents partially permeable membrane, or you can say semi-permeable or selectively permeable membrane. So this has separated the internal environment of this beaker into two different concentrations, that on the left side we have the less concentrated solution, or you can say dilute solution is being present on the left side of this partially permeable membrane, and on the right side we have concentrated solution. Now what will happen? There will be a movement of molecules of water. We have to talk about water only. So water will move from a region of high concentration to a region of low concentration through a semi-permeable membrane. Alright, and this is what we mean by osmosis. So the water has moved and it has increased the volume on the right hand side of this apparatus basically. So the volume of water has increased here. Water increased. So volume of water increased here. The water moved from a region of, alright, the water moved from a region of high concentration to a region of low concentration. Alright, or we can say, we can also consider this statement that water moved from a region of dilute concentration to a region of high concentration. The dilute concentration solution had more molecules of water in comparison to the high concentration solution that had less molecules of water. Then we have the molecules movement occurs. So basically it should be the movement occurs from an area of lower solute concentration, or you can also say dilute solution, to an area of higher solute concentration, that is the concentrated solution here. So here we have another apparatus that shows the concentrated solution on the left hand side, and on the right hand side there is dilute solution. So the dilute solution has high water molecule, The concentrated solution here has low concentration of, or you can say low water molecules, has low water molecules. So there is a net movement of water molecules from a region of high concentration to a region of low concentration, that is from the right hand side to the left hand side of this apparatus. So the level here falls and on the left hand side the level rises, alright, due to the movement of water molecules. So these arrows here represent movement of water molecules, alright. A partially permeable membrane is permeable but allows water to pass through more rapidly than dissolved substances, and this is a very important feature. So the partially permeable membrane, since it is permeable but it is not completely permeable, it is partially or you can say selectively permeable, it allows water to pass through more rapidly than dissolved substances. So there is more rapid movement of water molecules across a semi-permeable membrane, or you can say through a partially permeable membrane. Alright. The role of water in living organisms. So why do we require water? So most cells contain approximately 75% of water. We had about discussion in the starting of the lecture itself that the cell are made up of 75%, approximately 75% of water, and by the cells we constitute the living organism. Alright, so we say that the living organisms have their body that has 75% volume of water. Maintaining this water content is crucial for cell survival, since it is the main region where most of the chemical activities will occur. Now what will happen if the water is withdrawn from these cells? The chemical reactions that are occurring in the cell may get affected and the cell may not function properly, and by that it can lead to the death of the cell also. And if the cell is dead, the tissue will be dead. If the tissue will be dead, the organ will be dead, and hence the organ system, and leading toward the malfunctioning of the organism. So basically certain functions will be disturbed if the water concentration is lowered than the normal water concentration inside the organism. Alright, so this is very crucial component. The water is very crucial for carrying out the different processes inside our cell, and its deficiency may lead to dehydration, and dehydration is very you can say deadly, very fatal. Water acts as a solvent, allowing various substances to move within cells. Vital chemical reactions occur in water. Osmosis through partially permeable membrane. So cell membranes in living organisms are partially permeable. We have already had a discussion about the cell membranes. Cytoplasm and vacuoles contain dissolved substances. So basically in the vacuole they have cell sap when we talk about the plants. So in plants vacuoles occupy up to 90% volume of the cell, and inside the cell we have the cell sap that mainly has water as the component, and there are dissolved solutes in it. The cytoplasm itself has more amount of water in a cell. A partially permeable membrane allows movement of water more rapidly than dissolved substances. It selectively permits the movement of molecule of water based on their concentration gradient, and it occurs down a concentration gradient, or you can use the term across a concentration gradient to mention that there is movement of molecule from a region of high concentration to a region of low concentration. More water molecules are present in a dilute solution. We had already discussed about this. The concentration gradient encourages water to move from the dilute side of the concentration, or you can say concentrated side. Alright. The dilute solution has more water molecules. The water molecule move into the cell by the osmosis. This cell swells up. So basically whenever we keep the cell in a dilute solution, the cell tend to gain water through the process of osmosis. Alright, so water will move into the cell from the outer environment, and the outer environment had the maximum water molecules in it. So water molecules enter into the cell. this cell got swollen up. When we talk about whether it is a plant cell, now due to the presence of cell wall, the plant cell will not burst. Alright. But in the case of animal cells, this may lead to bursting of these cells. Alright. So concentration solution, if we keep these cells in concentrated solution, so what will happen? The cells will lose water. Alright, so there will be a movement of water molecule from a region of high concentration that is present in the cell when we compare it with the outer environment that in which the cell has been placed. So the concentrated solution, they may lose water through osmosis and the cell shrinks here. Alright. So on the left hand side we have a concentrated solution. Concentrated solution. On the right hand side we have dilute solution. And what can we infer from this diagram here? That here we have less number of solutes and more number of water molecules. Alright, so more number of water molecules will be there. And on the concentrated solution side, it has more number of solute and less number of water molecules. Then, considering the animal cell here, we have the A part that is representing that the cell has been placed in a higher concentration of free water that enables the water, or you can reconsider this statement that there is a higher concentration of free water molecule outside the cell than the inside. So the outside has high water molecules. Water molecules here. So the water diffuses into the cell because the cell has low water molecules. Alright. So the arrow here represents net movement of water molecules into the cell, into the cell here, and the cell has gained water molecules and has become swollen. Alright. Now if we talk about the plant cell here, so basically in addition to the cell membrane, the plant cell also has a cell wall outer to it. So basically here we can observe that there is a representation of cytoplasm. So it should be like this. Alright. There we have cell wall. Alright. And here we have the cell membrane here. The first number here represents, since there is effectively a lower concentration of water in the cell sap, so it must be representing the vacuole of the plant cell that has the cell sap. So basically the cell sap has lower concentration of water molecules. So the second number here represents the water will move into the vacuole here. So it shows movement of water molecules into the cell sap of vacuole. Alright. And due to the presence of water molecules which has been gained by the cell here. So there will be development of a pressure. Now the vacuole, since it has gained water molecules, will push the cytoplasm toward the cell membrane. All right. So by the presence of we can say water molecule in the cell sap here, it is generating a pressure over here, and by that it is moving the cytoplasm toward the cell wall or cell membrane, or we can say that it is moving the cytoplasm away from the its own cell structure, that is the vacuole. All right. So by this it is generating the pressure. So since it has gained the water molecule by the start of the experiment, it was something like this. So this is the shape of the vacuole. It has low concentration of water molecules, and by now it has gained the water molecules, and it will be able to push the cytoplasm toward the cell membrane here. And this is representing the process of osmosis that is occurring in a plant cell. Now, investigation of osmosis through dialysing tubing. So basically we have the experiment procedure here. Prepare a 15 centimeter length of dialysing tubing soaked in water, securing one end tightly with a knot. So we are basically preparing here. Partially filling the tubing with 1% starch solution using a dropping pipette. Position the tubing in a test tube, securing it with an elastic band. Thoroughly rinse the tubing and test tube under running water to remove any traces of starch solution from the outside of the dialysing tube as well. And here we have the dialysing tube. So this is representing the dialysing tube over here. This is the dialysing tube. Dialysing tube, and it has been prepared through the procedure written on the previous slide. The elastic band has been made to all right, to make it stick with the test tube here. The dialysing tubing containing starch solution, and here we have 1% starch solution here. All right. Experiment to demonstrate the effect of a partially permeable membrane, and this is the test tube here that has water in it. Water in test tube. Experiment procedure: fill the test tube with water. So we have first taken out the test tube, we have filled it with water and added a few drops of iodine solution. Now what does iodine solution do? It tests the presence of starch. All right, of starch. It turns from yellow to blue black in color. Black in color in presence of starch. All right. Allow the setup to sit undisturbed for 10 to 15 minutes so that the iodine solution is equally distributed in the water that is present in the test tube. Observe any changes in the solution within the test tube here. Now, since the water in the test tube had iodine solution in it, and iodine is responsible for testing the presence of starch in the food component or anything that has been tested using the iodine solution. So what will be the observation here? The starch inside the dialysing tube exhibit a blue coloration. Now the starch which was present in the dialysing tube here, since the dialysing tubing containing the starch solution, it has 1% starch solution, it has turned blue in color. And why did this blue color happen? That there is a change of color in the dialysing tube. How could this happen? So basically what we can assume from this statement, that iodine molecules must have moved into the dialysing tubing. All right, and we can also assume why the environment that has water that has iodine solution in it did not turn blue in color. We can assume from this that this starch has not passed the dialysing tubing and the starch has not moved into the test tube that has the iodine solution. Rather, what has actually happened, we are assuming this, that what has actually happened, the iodine solution, or we can say iodine molecules, must have crossed the dialysing tubing membrane and entered into it and turned the solution blue in color. Alright, so we can also infer from this that the starch molecules, being heavy in mass, were not able to cross the dialysing tube. The dialysing tubing has the pore which only allowed the iodine molecules to pass across it and inhibit the movement of starch molecules across it. So this must have been happened during the experiment here. So iodine solution, so iodine outside the tubing remains a yellow or brown, since it has already stated that the iodine solution that was surrounding the dialysing tubing did not change color. This means the starch has not crossed the dialysing tubing bag here. All right. So here we have the interpretation from this. The blue color indicates the reaction between starch and iodine, commonly used as a test for starch. We have already discussed about this. Iodine molecules pass through the dialysing tubing into the starch solution, while starch molecules do not move out of the tubing into the iodine solution. And why did this happen? The starch molecules, being heavy in nature, did not cross the dialysing tubing. Partially permeability of the dialysing tubing is due to its pore size. So the dialysing tubing was partially permeable. The starch molecules, being large, likely cannot pass through the pores, whereas iodine molecules, being smaller, can traverse the membrane. I hope this experiment is clear to you all. Now next we have the key pointers that have to be kept in mind while considering this investigation of osmosis through dialysing tubing. The starch inside dialysing tubing turns blue. This was the first illustration that we get, or we can say observation that we get from this experiment. Iodine solution outside remains yellow brown. Reaction between starch and iodine confirms the presence of starch. Iodine molecules permeate dialysing tubing while starch molecules do not exit. Dialysing tubing partial permeability is attributed to pore size. Starch molecules, being larger in size, likely impeded from passing through the pores, whereas the iodine molecules, smaller in size, can traverse the dialysing tubing membrane. I hope this is clear to you all. The plant cell, having the process of osmosis, and how do we relate it to the turgidity. So basically plant cells are surrounded by a fully permeable cell wall. In addition to this, we have already discussed about in the previous one shot that the plant cells are the structures have cell membrane, cell wall. Alright. Cell membrane is semi-permeable in nature, permeable, whereas the cell walls here are partially permeable. Alright. They also have partially permeable cell membrane similar to animal cells. In pure water, plant cells take in water through the process of osmosis. Now, when we talk about the pure water, we are certainly assuming that the, why to assume, it do have high concentration of water molecules in it basically. Alright. So, in pure water, maximum number of water molecules are present. So let us take an example over here. We have this beaker, all right. In which we have placed this plant cell here. Let us assume that this is the plant cell. Alright, so we have the plant cell over here, showing the cell wall here, and inner to it we have the cell membrane. Alright, then we have the vacuole over this region. This is the vacuole representation here, and it also have nucleus. So we have nucleus over here. Now it has been placed in a situation where the surrounding environment has pure water, and compared to this, the plant cell is having low concentration of water molecules. Now what will happen? There will be a net movement of water molecules into the cell. So this is what is actually happening. The water molecules entered plant cells here. Alright, so the cell must have become swollen in structure, but due to presence of cell wall, it will not burst. Alright, so this statement is clear. The plant cells take in water through the process of osmosis. And here we have the representation of a plasmolysed cell. And what do we mean by plasmolysis? The plasmolysis is the terminology that has been provided to the process in which there is shrinkage of cell contents away from cell wall in a plant cell when they were kept in a highly concentrated solution. And by highly concentrated solution, we infer that the solution is having low concentration of water molecules. So the water will move from a region of high concentration that is present inside the cell into the external environment. Alright, and this diagram totally depicts what has happened to the plant cell when it was placed in a solution that has high concentration of solutes in it and low concentration of water molecules. Alright, and here we can observe this diagram has the representation of cell membrane. So here we have the cell membrane. Alright, and we have the cell wall over here. Right, so the cell has been surrounded by a solution that is concentrated solution. Here we have the concentrated solution as well outside the cell, and the cell has less concentrated solution inside it. So the plant has become flaccid. So how do we tell that the plant has become plant has performed the process of plasmolysis? So basically the plant has become shrunk in size, or you can say that the cell size has shrunken. So we mean that the plant cell is flaccid and may plasmolyze in a concentrated solution. Alright, so this is what we mean by the plant cell when it is placed in a concentrated solution, when it is compared to the solution that is present inside the cell here. Then what do we mean by turgidity? So due to the intake of water molecules into the plant cell, it has become turgid. So turgid cell result from water uptake. So plant cell tend to take up water, the animal cell tend to take up water, but due to the presence of cell wall in plant cells, the plant cells do not burst, whereas the animal cells burst. Alright, we will apply all of these concepts which we are discussing in this session to solve the previous year paper questions we have attached in the end of the topic discussion here. All right. The strong cell wall prevents the plant cell from bursting. The turgidity help plant cell to stay upright and keep leaves firm. So due to the presence of this feature, that is the turgidity, which has happened due to the intake of water into the cells are now you can say firm and has quite right in a shape so as to provide the plant its firmness and help the plant to stay upright. All right. The concentrated solution is a solution. Whenever the plant cell is placed in a concentrated solution, the plant cell lose water. So the plant has lost water. There is a movement of a water molecule from a region of high concentration that is in the plant cell into the outer environment. Cytoplasm shrinks, causing the cell to become flaccid. So flaccid is a condition whenever we need to mention that the plant cell has lost the water molecules. Flaccidity leads to wilting. The drooping of the leaves is observed whenever there is concentrated solution surrounding these cells. Then extreme concentration solutions, whenever we are keeping the plant cells in extreme concentration solutions, cell membrane tears resulting in the cell damage. All right, so this might happen. Mechanism of osmosis. So here, since we have already discussed about the osmosis, how does this happen, so there is not much to focus, but still we will go through the statements here and we will observe that we have already understood this part as well. So attractive forces are there. When a solute dissolves in water, its molecules attract water molecules, reducing the concentration of free water molecules. Now let us assume that here we have, so this is the water molecule here. All right, so here we have the water molecule and it is surrounded by, or you can say that first we will consider that this is a water molecule and on the other side we will assume that here we also have the water molecule which is surrounded by the sugar molecule. So these sugar molecules are attached to the water molecule here, decreasing the exposed surface area of water molecules. By exposed surface area, I mean that the area that is available for attachment of other sugar molecules to the water molecule here. So, all right. Here we have exposed water molecule. It is actually free to move. All right, it is not bound to anything. Now this water molecule is bound to sugar molecules that decrease its permeability. All right, so the concentration gradient for water, there are more free water molecules on the left hand side, so more will diffuse from left to the right than in the other direction, since the water molecules present on the right hand side are not free to cross this particular membrane over here. Then sugar molecules will diffuse more slowly from right to left. All right, sugar molecules on one side of the membrane attract water molecules, leading to unequal water distribution here. All right. The water potential is another topic and it is very important for the extended students here. The measure of whether a solution is likely to lose or gain water molecules from another solution. So how do I identify that one cell will gain water molecule or the cell will lose water molecule? So we will consider the water potential here. So basically we had just talked about the two different kind of solutions, that is we have talked about the dilute solution, we have talked about the concentrated solutions. In the terms of concentration of solute and water molecules concentration here. Now how do we relate the water potential to dilute solutions and to concentrated solutions? So let us write the statement for this. All right, so dilute solution here and on the other hand we have concentrated solution. All right. The dilute solution have more water molecules. The concentrated solution have less water molecules. The dilute solution have less number of solutes. The concentrated solution have more number of solutes. Now, we only know about these two differences whenever we talk about the dilute solution and the concentrated solution. So, how do we relate the water potential to these solutions? Now, you have to consider that the solution that has high water molecules in it has high water potential. Now, what do we mean by this? The concentrated solution will have lower water potential. The dilute solution will have higher water potential. Now, how do we relate the movement of water molecules considering water potential here? So, there will be a movement of water molecules from a region of high water potential to a region of low water potential. Alright, I hope this thing is clear to you all, and I am writing this statement as well here. So, the dilute solution has high water potential. And what are the solutions that have high water potential generally, or you can say maximum water potential? We have pure water for that, we have fresh water for that, we have distilled water for that has high water potential. All right. And on the other hand side, the concentrated solution have low water potential. All right. Then the pure water has highest possible water potential since it has a maximum number of water molecules in it. The water molecule flow from pure water to any aqueous solution, because in comparison to the pure water, the other solution will always have less number of water molecules in comparison to the pure water. All right. Then the water potential gradient is also considered whenever there is movement of water molecules across any surface here. So, formed when cells with different water potentials are in contact. So, it is same as that when we talked about the diffusion concentration gradient. So, whenever there is difference of molecules concentration, so we can say that there is development of concentration gradient. And when we talk about the water potential gradient, it is whenever the cells with the different water potentials are kept in contact with each other. So, there will be a cell that has high water potential, that has low water potential. So, there will be a movement of water molecule from a region of high water potential to a region of low water potential. All right. Then water moves from cell with higher water potential, that is more dilute, to cells with lower water potential, that is more concentrated. The more dilute solution here has more solutes, less water. More concentrated have, all right, this should be reversed since it is saying more dilute, so it has more water and less solutes, and more concentrated has more solute and less water. Importance of water potential and osmosis in plants. So, turgid cells, those cells that has gained water molecules, all right. So, vacuole pushes out on the cell wall, exerting a turgor pressure. So, it has been exerted by the presence of water molecules in the cell sap of the vacuole. So, due to the presence of water molecules in the cell sap, the vacuole is able to generate a turgor pressure, that is to expel, or we can say to push the cytoplasm toward the cell wall here. Then turgor pressure is the force inside the cell pushing the cell membrane against the cell wall. Turgid cells result in a firm upright stem and straight leaves. So we have the shrunk cell here in the first diagram. The cytoplasm, or you can say the cell contents, is moving away from the cell wall. On the second diagram we have the normal cell that have optimum amount of water in the vacuole in the cell sap, and the shape is quite good in structure. Whereas on the right hand side we have the turgid cell that has gained much water molecules, and by that it generates a turgo pressure. And the diagram here compares the structure of shrunk, normal and the cell that has become more swollen as its turgidity increases. What happens to the cells when they were kept in highly concentrated solutions? So there is plasmolysis, and there is also occurrence of flaccid cells, and by flaccid cells we also mean that the cell has lost water molecules. The plasmolysis cells lose water becoming flaccid. Flaccid cells leave, become limp, stem droops, they become dry. All right. Wilting occurs when a plant loses too much water. The root hair cell touch water between soil particles. Water enter into the cell by osmosis when the cell sap has lower water potential than the soil water. So there is also this movement of water considering the water potential. So the water in the root hair has or we can say the solution has a lower water potential in the root hair cell, whereas the soil has higher water potential, and due to that there will be movement of water molecules from soil, that is the high water potential region, into the root hair cell, that is the low water potential region. So here you can observe that this is the representation of root over here. All right, so root here is there, cytoplasm is here, cell wall is there, nucleus is there, and vacuole is there. So vacuole has the cell sap in it, and due to the presence of water, it has water potential in it, but lower to that surrounding the soil particles here. All right, the water and minerals are moving into the root hair cell, and it is taken up into the vacuole, and it is moved further to the surrounding cells. All right, so the plant has roots, and on roots there are numerous root hair, due to which the surface area for absorption of water and mineral ions is increased. Now we have come to another topic, that is the active transport, and by this time we have already attained some kind of information about the active transport. We have already discussed it. There were processes that were involving movement of water molecules, or involving movement of gas molecules, or occurring in the dissolved substances, that follows a passive pathway. That means the molecules were moving from a region of high concentration to a region of low concentration. And there was also a specialized case of osmosis of diffusion, that is the osmosis in which the water was moving from a region of high concentration to a region of low concentration through semi-permeable membrane. And we can also consider from that that they too were following the passive type of pathway, and on the other hand side we are now moving the molecules against the concentration gradient. That means we are moving the molecules from a region of low concentration. The concentration already has low number of solutes in it. Alright, or we can say the particles that are to be moved from the surface here. So the active transport includes the movement of molecules from a region of low concentration to a region of high concentration. Since this is against a concentration gradient, it do not happens on its own. So it requires a carrier protein to carry out the process. Since it is occurring against the concentration gradient, it requires energy from the respiration process. All right, so we will proceed with that here. Now the representation here says, all right, so substances are there. All right, carrier protein molecule is there. Since active transport involves the carrier protein molecule, let us see whether the define is given here. So we will write about it in the first slide here of the active transport. So basically active transport is a type of transport in which you can say the movement of molecules against a concentration gradient, that is from low concentration to high concentration. It requires carrier proteins for the process to occur. It requires energy, that is in the form of ATP from respiration process. All right. Now, here we have the representation. Substance combines with carrier protein molecule. So here we can observe that there is the pocket at which the substance will bind. This is the pocket over here. The substance are binding to it. All right. The carrier proteins are now passing the molecules across the cell membrane here, but it requires energy from the process of respiration to open up this channel here. All right. And the substance has been released into the cells by this. So carrier transports substance across membrane using energy from respiration. And here is we have the theoretical model to explain the active transport. The movement of particles, or you can say molecules, through the cell membrane occurs, and it occurs against a concentration gradient, against a concentration gradient, requires carrier protein and ATP from, or you can say this is another statement, so we will use this mark over here, ATP from respiration. So energy from respiration powers the active transport to happen, and you can observe from this diagram the molecules are moving passively as well as actively, and here normal diffusion is observed, facilitated diffusion is observed, that involves carrier proteins. Involves carrier proteins and channel proteins as well when we talk about the facilitated diffusion. All right, whereas when we talk about the active transport, it uses carrier proteins only. All right. So diffusion occurs through the lipid bilayer. So we have already studied about the lipid bilayer, that is the cell membrane. So diffusion of the molecules across a concentration gradient. There we have high concentration of molecules and they are moving across the cell membrane here. The facilitated diffusion is also a type of diffusion, but it requires carrier protein for the process. It occurs across a concentration gradient. The active transport are moving the molecules from a region of low concentration to a region of high concentration over here, and it requires ATP for the process as well. I hope this is clear to you all. Now, what is the importance of active transport? So basically, the glucose molecules are taken up into the villi, or we can say into the small intestine, using the active kind of transport as well. So basically, we use the carrier proteins, we use the energy from respiration process to pass the glucose molecules against the concentration gradient here. Here we have the intestinal lumen. Here we have the blood, and the glucose are entering into the blood capillaries here. The carrier proteins, the protein molecules responsible for substance transport that are used in the active transport. Active transport occurs through these carriers, and we can observe that the low concentration of the molecules are represented here. The ATP then converts into the ADP and inorganic phosphate, and by that it has released the energy stored in the chemical bond, and due to that the carrier protein is able to transport the molecule from low concentration to high concentration region. Alright, so mineral salt uptake in plant roots takes place through active transport. So, active transport from dilute soil solution, whenever it is surrounded by the dilute solute or we can say dilute soil solution, the solute or we can say the mineral ion enters into the root hair cell by following the pathway of active transport. The chemical energy from the respiration drives the salt movement, or you can say it aids in the process of active transport here. So, water absorbed by the roots here and water travels up the trunk. So, water is moved passively and the mineral ions are moving actively. And here we have completed the theory part of this particular chapter, and we will begin with the question part, and it includes the questions that are taken from past year papers. So let's begin here with our session. The first question here says, the diagram shows a section through an alveolus and through a capillary. How does carbon dioxide move from Y to X? So here we have the alright, so this is the Y region here, and here we have the X region. How does carbon dioxide move from Y to X? Since we have already discussed that the molecules move from a region of higher concentration to a region of low concentration following the passage of diffusion. Alright, so the process that enables the movement of carbon dioxide from Y to X is by diffusion. Alright. In which row will the diffusion of ions into a cell be the quickest? So, diffusion of ions is occurring into the cell. Ion concentration should be low. In order to attain movement of molecules or ions into the cell must be deficit in the ion, and the ion concentration in the cell should be low. The ion concentration in the external solution should be high. The surface area of the cell should be large in order to in order to diffuse the ions quickest, we need large surface area so that large molecules can pass across. Width of the cell membrane should be thin, and we have D as the right option. Then we have, what is an example of diffusion? Dust particles being moved by ciliated cells in the trachea. So the ciliated cells, that is the cells that have cilia, perform a coordinated movement and push the mucus from the lungs to the outside. Alright. So basically, it is not showing any kind of diffusion of molecules. The molecules are not moving across anything here. Following concentration gradient. Oxygen molecules moving into RBC in the lungs. So this is the right answer. Since we have observed that the RBC in the blood capillaries have low oxygen concentration, and the alveoli having high oxygen concentration let the molecules of oxygen move into the blood capillary. So this follows the diffusion process. Pollen grains moving from anthers to sigma in the vein. So this is the pollination process. Red blood cells moving in a blood capillary in a muscle. This is not showing any kind of diffusion of molecules across any surface. The diagram shows apparatus used to investigate osmosis. The volumes of solution A, B, C, D were the same at the start of the experiment. So all of these solutions have equal volumes at the start of the investigation. After 1 hour, the solution had moved up the glasses. So all of them have the solution that had moved up the glass tubes. Which solution was the most concentrated at the start of the investigation? So to identify the solution that was most concentrated, it must have gained maximum water molecules. Alright, so basically let us assume that this is the region over here and it has high concentration of solutes, and outside to this we have low concentration of solutes. All right, so there will be a movement of water molecules that will occur from the outside, since the concentration is having low concentration of solutes at the outside. So water molecules will move into the dialysing tubing here, so it will attain, or we can say it will gain more number of maximum molecules and have highest level of the solution that has moved in the glass tube here. So we will say that option D is the right answer for this. All right, now moving toward the question number 5 here, that says which route describes active transport. So is there movement of water? So this should be no over here. Water follows the passage of diffusion. Energy used from respiration, yes, energy is utilized by the process of respiration. Movement through a cell membrane, yes, a cell membrane is also required for that. And since the cell membrane is partially permeable membrane, and we have option D here as the right answer. Then we have question number 6 that says which graph represents the effect of increasing temperature on the rate of diffusion. To increase the temperature, there will be also an increase in rate of diffusion. So by increasing the temperature, the rate of diffusion increases. By further increase in temperature, the rate of diffusion further increases. So that graph should be increasing with respect to temperature when we talk about the rate of diffusion. So graph D here represents the right graphical representation, on which the x-axis here represents temperature. On the y-axis we have the rate of diffusion, and in increase in temperature the rate of diffusion also increases. On further increase in temperature, the rate of diffusion further increases, and in further increase in temperature there is further increase in rate of diffusion here. Then we have which characteristics are correct for both osmosis and diffusion. So they require a partially permeable membrane. Osmosis require a partially permeable membrane. Diffusion do not require, so it should be a cross. Require a concentration gradient. Yes, both of these require a concentration gradient. Are energy consuming processes? No, they are passive processes. They do not require energy. Option C here is the right answer. Then we have, alright, so question number 8 says which road describes active transport. Direction of movement of particles through a membrane against the concentration gradient should be correct. Using energy from respiration, yes, option C. So you can see how easy the concept has been applied to these questions. Alright, and these questions are from past years. So you can assume from this that the question level, what kind of question level are we getting in the examinations. Alright, on the basis of the chapter discussion, on the basis of topic discussion, we have prepared ourselves to perform all of these past year papers in a very easy manner. Alright. Question number 9 here says samples of plant cells from same species are immersed in 3 different liquids. Sorry. So the plant cells that has been taken from same species were immersed in 3 different liquids. The low concentration sucrose solution has a higher water potential than the plant cell cytoplasm. Now, if we have kept the plant cell in a low concentration sucrose solution, that means it has a higher water potential in comparison to the plant cell cytoplasm. And when we talk about the high concentration, so the high concentration sucrose solution has a lower water potential, alright, than the plant cell cytoplasm. What is the state of the cells in different liquids? When we place the plant cell in distilled water, so distilled water has maximum water molecules, or you can say that maximum water potential. The water molecule will move from distilled water into the plant cell. The cell of plant will tend to gain the water molecule, so it will become turgid. All right. When the plant cell is kept in a low concentration sucrose solution, so the low concentration sucrose solution has high water molecules, or you can say the high water potential is present in the low concentration sucrose solution, and due to that the water will move into the plant cell that has low water potential. It will also become turgid. Alright. Then when the plant cell is kept in high concentration sucrose solution, so water will be lost from the plant cell as it has the higher water potential when it is compared to the outside solution. So it will become flaccid, or it will become plasmolized. Alright.
if it has high concentration sucrose solution. All right, so we have plasmolysed as the right answer. Option D is the right situation here. Which processes requires energy from respiration? And we have got to know about that. The only process is we can say active transport. Some plant cells are placed in distilled water for 1 hour, and distilled water has maximum water molecules, and you can also say that it has high water potential. Which description of the condition of the plant cell after 1 hour is correct? So water will move from a region of high water potential. Alright, water move from high water potential to low water potential. The cell will gain water molecules. It will become turgid in nature. Question number 12 has a diagrammatic representation, and we have to select which option here represents active transport. So, partially permeable cell membrane should be there. It requires energy from respiration, yes. So, we will eliminate the C option here and the D option here. The molecules move from a low concentration region to a high concentration region, and in the options A and B we are certainly observing that the option B has the low molecules on the left hand side and the molecules are moving towards the right that already has high concentration of solutes. So B here represents the right diagrammatic representation for active transport. Question number 13 says, what will increase the rate of diffusion across a gas exchange surface? So, we have temperature. By increasing temperature, the diffusion rate increases. We have surface area. By increasing the surface area, diffusion rate increases. We have concentration gradient. By increasing the concentration gradient, the diffusion process increases. The distance is also considered across which the diffusion is occurring. So if the distance across which the surface is occurring, the diffusion, it will increase the rate of diffusion. So decreased distance from the surfaces increase the rate of diffusion. Alright, so a decrease in the concentration gradient will also decrease the rate of diffusion. A decrease in diffusion distance will increase the rate of diffusion. A decrease in kinetic energy of molecules will cause a decrease in rate of diffusion. A decrease in surface area of the gas exchange surface will also decrease the rate of diffusion. Question number 14 says, what happens when potato plant cells are placed in pure water? Since we have already discussed that it has high water potential, so the water molecules will move into the potato plant cell that has low water potential and it will become turgid. Water enters the cell. Option B is the right answer here. Which factor would increase the rate of diffusion of oxygen molecules out of a photosynthesizing leaf? Alright. Decreasing the concentration gradient will decrease the rate of diffusion of oxygen molecules. Decreasing the distance over which the diffusion occurs will increase the rate of diffusion. Alright. Decreasing the surface area of the leaf will decrease the rate of diffusion. Decreasing temperature will decrease the rate of diffusion. So option B here is the right answer. 16 question number says, which process involves only the movement of water through partially permeable membrane? It is directly indicating osmosis. Which statement about active transport is correct? It does not require a cell membrane. It do require a cell membrane. It does not require energy from respiration. It requires energy from respiration. It moves particles from a region of low concentration to a region of high concentration. Now this is a correct statement. It moves water into and out of the cells. Water follows the pathway of diffusion here. Or you can say it moves passively. Question number 18 says, why does oxygen diffuse into the blood from an alveolus in the lungs? Due to the presence of concentration gradient, the oxygen molecules diffuse across the surfaces. The oxygen concentration in the alveolus is greater. So question is saying, why does oxygen diffuse into the blood? So the oxygen must be high in alveoli and low in blood. Oxygen concentration in the alveolus is greater than the carbon dioxide. We will relate only the molecules which are to be transferred. So, considering the oxygen concentration in the blood as well as in the alveolus. Oxygen concentration in the alveolus is greater than in the blood. B is the right statement. Oxygen concentration in blood is greater than in the alveolus. Oxygen concentration in the blood is greater than the carbon dioxide. We will not relate carbon dioxide when we are talking about the movement of oxygen molecules. Question number 19 says the diagram shows two plant cells. This statement describes what will happen to the water in plant cells. So, high water potential is present in cell X, low water potential is present in cell Y. Water will move from a region of high water potential to a region of low water potential. So, there will be a net movement of water from cell X to cell Y. Option B here is the right answer. Cell X to cell Y. Question number 20 here says which row describes active transport? So, active transport involves movement of substances from low to high concentration, yes. So, active transport requires energy from respiration, yes. Does active transport require protein carried in the cell membrane? Yes. Option D here is the right answer. Question number 21 says the diagram shows how a cell appears under the microscope at the start of an experiment and after it has been placed in a dilute solution of salt for 5 minutes. Since it has been placed in a solution that has dilute that is behaving as dilute solution and it has salt in it, so basically it has a high water potential. The water will move into the cell. At the start of the experiment, the cell was something like this as present in the left diagram, and on the right side, after placing in a dilute solution of salt, the cell has gained water molecules. And the water, since it is crossing the cell membrane, which is partially permeable in nature, all right. So, it follows the process of osmosis here. Water enters the cell by osmosis. What causes the diffusion of oxygen into a plant cell? Diffusion of oxygen is through the movement of molecules. What causes the diffusion of oxygen into a plant cell? All right. Active transport is there, movement of molecules is there, osmosis. So, active transport is transporting the molecules against a concentration gradient, and in osmosis we can say diffusion of water molecules across a partially permeable membrane occurs. And what causes the diffusion of oxygen into a plant cell? So, photosynthesis is not relatable to that. So, we will mark that movement of molecules of water will let the oxygen molecules move into the plant cell. So, basically movement of molecules of oxygen here. B option is the right or we can say appropriate here. Which process causes oxygen to pass from an alveolus into the blood capillary here? So, that follows the pathway of diffusion here. Alright. Which diagram shows the appearance of a plant cell after it is placed in pure water? So, since the pure water has high water potential, the plant cell will gain water molecules and become turgid. So, since B cell here represents the cell has burst, so due to the presence of cell wall, the plant cell will not burst. Option D here provides the right answer since it has become turgid. Alright. Question number 25 says what would lead to a decrease in diffusion rate into a cell? Now we have to select that factor that will decrease the diffusion rate. Greater concentration gradient will increase the diffusion rate. Higher temperature will increase the diffusion rate. Larger surface area will increase the diffusion rate. Thicker cell wall will decrease the diffusion rate as we have discussed in the theory part of this session. Question number 26 says by which process is water vapor lost from a leaf? Alright, so it is lost by the process of diffusion. The diagram show how a cell appears under the microscope at the start of an experiment and after it has been placed in a dilute solution of salt for 5 minutes. So, it has come in October-November series of 2023 examinations. The paper variant is 21. It also came in October-November series, paper variant 11, alright, for the year 2023. So, option C here is the right answer. The concentration of nitrite ions is higher inside a root hair cell. So, nitrate ions are higher. So, it is saying that the root hair has concentrated solution than the soil. So, soil must have dilute solution in comparison to the we can say root hair cell. What would be required for the absorption of nitrate ions into the root hair cells? So, you are basically moving nitrate ions from a low concentration region, that is in the soil, to the high concentration region, that is in the root hair cell. So, it will require energy. It is going against the concentration gradient. It requires carrier proteins. Mitochondria will be required to generate the energy here. Oxygen will be required to carry out the aerobic respiration process. Membrane proteins are also involved to carry out the process of active transport. Cell wall has no role over here. So, 1, 2 and 3. Option B here is the right answer. Then we have question number 29 that says the diagram shows an experiment set up to investigate in osmosis and living cells. We have potato here. Potato has a pocket over here in which water is filled. Alright. So, potato has been placed in a solution that is concentrated sugar solution. What happens to the volumes of water X and sugar solution Y after the 12 hours? Since the potato has water in it, so the potato has a high water potential here. Potato pocket basically, high water potential in potato pocket. Alright, and concentrated sugar solution here has low water potential. So, there will be net movement of water from potato pocket to the external concentrated sugar solution. The volume of water will decrease in X. The volume of sugar solution will increase since it has gained the water molecules. Gains water molecules. Option A here is the right answer. Which statement about active transport are correct? We have to select that statement that is correct with respect to active transport. It transports particles from low concentration to a high concentration. We have already studied about this. This statement is correct. It always transports particles into the cell. This is not true always. So, basically it can be that there is removal of we can say substances out of the cell. So, it is incorrect here. It involves protein molecules in the cell membrane. Yes, it do involve. It uses energy from respiration. Yes. So, first, third and fourth statement. Option B here is the right answer. Then we have 31 question that says which diagram shows the appearance of plant cell after it is placed in pure water. Now, you can see that this is a repeated question that has also come in October-November paper variant 23 in the year 23. So, we have the pure water that has high water potential. So, water molecule will move from a region of high water potential to a region of low water potential, that is into the plant cell, and the plant cell will become turgid as represented in option D over here. Which process requires active transport? So, oxygen movement from the alveoli to the blood follows diffusion. Ion uptake by root hair cell from the soil mostly is taken up by using active kind of transport here. Water movement through a plant cell, through a plant by transpirational pull is following diffusion here. Absorption of water into a leg tail into small intestine vilus also follows the pathway of passive transport. By which process is water vapor lost from a leaf? It follows the passage of diffusion over here. The diagram shows a test tube containing clear jelly. A drop of blue ink is injected into the middle of the jelly. Alright, so we have the drop of blue ink over here. we have the clear jelly that is present in the test tube. The blue color of the ink spreads throughout the jelly. Now, by which process does this blue ink spread through the jelly? So, it has moved from a region of concentrated solution toward the less concentrated regions. So, basically it is, since there is no partially permeable membrane over here, so we will simply say that the diffusion has occurred in the test tube here. It will travel to the low concentrated regions, alright. Now, we have question number 35 that says, the diagram shows the apparatus used in an osmosis investigation. In this investigation, a dialysis tubing bag was filled with a sucrose solution. So, dialysing tubing bag has a sucrose solution. This is sealed and weighed. Alright. The dialysing tubing bag was then immersed in distilled water for 1 hour. So, distilled water has high water potential. So, water will move from a region of high water potential into the region of low water potential, and that low water potential region is present in this dialysing tubing bag. So, we will write that it has low water potential, alright. After 1 hour, the dialysing tubing bag was removed from the beaker and the surface was dried and the bag was reweighed. So, the bag was reweighed after this, which row explains what will happen during the investigation. Mass of dialysing tubing bag at the end of investigation will increase since it has gained the water molecules. There will be no net movement of sucrose molecules since it will not be able to cross the dialysing tubing bag membrane over here. So, there will be no net movement. Net movement of molecules of water will be into the bag. So, we clearly get option C as the right answer, alright. Since the dialysing tubing bag is permeable to the water molecules depending on the pore size of that, and sucrose is unable to cross the dialysing tubing bag. Question number 36 says, which row describes active transport of ions? So, direction of movement of ions from low concentration to high concentration, alright, and requires energy from respiration, yes, so it should be D for the right answer. The concentration of sodium ions in the soil is lower than the concentration inside root hair cell. So, concentration of sodium ions in the soil is lower. So, it has high water potential. Now, you can observe that we can solve any question considering the water potential as the factor. The concentration of sodium ions in the soil is lower. The concentration inside the root hair cells, it has low water potential. Which process will be used when sodium ions are taken into the root hair cell from the soil? So, it is moving the, we can say, the concentration of sodium ions in the soil is lower. So, low solutes in soil and it has high solutes in root hair cell. Alright. Which process will be used when sodium ions are taken into root hair cell? So, root hair cell already has a high solute. So, we are moving the solute from a region of low to high concentration. Active transport should be the right answer here. 38 question number here says, by which process does oxygen pass out of a leaf and it follows the pathway of diffusion here? A tuber from a potato plant was cut into pieces of identical length. The pieces of potato were placed in 4 different solutions for 3 hours. Alright. When it was placed in pure sugar, pure water, then it was placed in sugar solution that is less concentrated. Then the potato cell contains a sugar solution that is more concentrated than the potato cell contains, and a sugar solution that is same concentration as the potato cell contains. So, whenever there is concentration gradient, the movement of molecules will occur. Which solution will cause the pieces of potato to change in length? Either the potato piece length becomes shorter, or it can either become short in length or it can become long in length by the movement of water molecules into the cell or out of the cell, and it can only be seen whenever there is concentration gradient between these two regions, that is the potato cell and the solution that has that we have kept the potato cell into. So pure water has the water potential that is maximum, and when the potato piece here is placed in water, that is pure water, water molecule will move from pure water into the potato piece. This will cause the increase in length of the potato piece. So this will change the length of the potato piece here. A sugar solution that is less concentrated means that it is having more water. So the water will move into the plant cell that is the potato cell, and this will also change the shape or we can say the length of potato cell here. A sugar solution that is more concentrated, that means it has less water molecules in it. So potato cell will lose water molecules into the surrounding environment, and by this we can also observe that the potato piece has changed its length and has become shorter. A sugar solution that is the same concentration as the potato cell content, so there will be no net movement, and this will not cause any kind of change in length of the pieces of potato. So this is incorrect. We have first, second and third as correct. Option B here is the right answer. Next is question number 40, that says which row shows the features of active transport. Now as you all know that active transport is a type of transport in which the molecules are being moved from a region of low concentration to a region of high concentration through protein carriers, and energy is also required. So requires energy from respiration? Yes, they do require. Movement against a concentration gradient? Yes. From low to high? Movement of water molecules only, so it do not involve the water molecules movement only. So we have option C as the right answer. Moving to question number 1 here, that says the diagram shows an experiment demonstrating osmosis using a dialysis tubing bag. After 30 minutes, the level of the liquid in the glass tube goes. So here we have a blank that is mentioned as 1, and here we have another blank that is mentioned as 2. So after 30 minutes, the level of the liquid in the glass tube goes. So there is a blank because the water had a, so there is another blank, water potential, then the sugar solution. Which words correctly complete the sentence here? So to solve this question, we have this beaker here in which dialysis tubing bag is already there. It has a sugar solution in it. The water is also there. So water has the high water potential here. And what will happen? Comparing this high water potential to the water potential that is present in the dialysing tubing, it has low water potential since there is presence of sugar in it. So water will move from a region of high water potential to a region of low water potential, and the sugar will not be able to cross the dialysing tubing bag over here. So the question is saying the after 30 minutes the level of the liquid in the glass tube. So since it has low water potential, the water move into the glass tube here. Alright, and the water level of the glass tube will rise. So here we have the level of the liquid in the glass tube goes up because the water had a higher water potential than the sugar solution. So comparing these two, first has up as the fill up and second has higher as the fill up, we get answer as option number D. I hope you understood this. Moving to question number 42. I guess this is straight understood by you all that this is showing a type of active transport. Alright, so let us read the question. The diagram shows the movement of glucose molecules across a cell membrane. We have this cell membrane in which phospholipids are presented. We have this molecule over here that is responsible for carrying the glucose against its concentration gradient, that is from a region of low concentration to a region of high concentration. Alright, so this requires energy for the process to happen, and this is a type of active transport. In active transport, the molecules are transported against the concentration gradient using protein carriers, and energy is required by these. So basically, which statement describes molecule T, and T here is the carrier protein. It is a fat molecule? Incorrect. It is a fat molecule? Incorrect. It is a protein molecule? Yes. To transport glucose down a concentration gradient, that means that you are moving the glucose molecule across a concentration from a region of high concentration to a region of low concentration, as that is not true over here. Statement D says it is a protein molecule used to transport glucose against a concentration gradient. That is the true statement over here. Alright. Now, by this we have ended the discussion of this chapter by solving the previous year questions as well. And for further sessions like this, stay connected with us and keep studying. Thank you.